USA Wrestling would like to show you some of the exciting merchandise that is offered for the athlete. To order these officially licensed USA Wrestling products, call 1-800-727-USA-1.
Koslowski, U.S. National Coach in Greco-Roman Wrestling. USA Wrestling has asked me to develop a tape which can be used to begin exposing the sport of Greco-Roman Wrestling to all wrestlers and coaches who are interested in learning the new techniques of Greco-Roman Wrestling in the sport today. Greco-Roman Wrestling is becoming very popular in the United States. One thing that I always like to tell people is that real men wrestle Greco-Roman. What I mean by that is that wrestling is a very difficult sport in its own right. A person can play basketball, they can play tennis, but they don't play wrestling. Wrestling is very, very difficult. And on top of that, in the sport of Greco, we limit the moves to anything above the waist. So you're not able to grab a person below the waist or trip or grab them. So that's why I say real men wrestle Greco. It's a very heads up, chest out type of sport. Many times the difference between a winner and loser isn't as much technique as it is a person that just has a stronger will to win. I'd like to, in this tape, expose some of those techniques that I have used that have made me successful and move into special techniques that help the official understand what you're trying to do and tactics that will make Greco more accessible and much more successful for you in your attempts to become a world-class Greco-Roman wrestler. Just recently, FILA, the international governing body of wrestling, has changed the rules. The reason they changed the rules in international wrestling is to force more action and more excitement into the sport of wrestling. Each year, or each Olympiad, they begin with new rules, and the rules that they have recently come up with is moving the match to a 5-minute continuous match. What they're looking for in this 5-minute match is continuous action with a lot of attempts to score and also more scoring in the bouts themselves. The problem with trying to adapt to these new rules is to get an individual to take a risk and try to score points without giving up points themselves. So what I will be showing today is certain moves that I would call low-risk, high-percentage scoring moves. These would be moves that will work on trying to create imbalances against your opponents. In other words, instead of trying to grab your opponent around the waist or a full body lock type situation, we will be trying to work with creating imbalances such as grabbing 2-on-1s, in other words, grabbing one arm, either an outside or inside 2-on-1 situation, and working your scoring moves off of that. This has very, very good merit because for one thing, you can make a good scoring attempt without throwing yourself to your back, and also you will look very active to the officials. And these 2 points are very important in international competition when you have evenly balanced wrestlers. I will be working on that and showing different arm spins, headlocks, even body locks off of these 2-on-1s, and then we will also work on some of the classical throws and the all-important parterre position as far as low gut wrench, high gut wrench, and also body lift positions. As I mentioned earlier, it is very important that you become active very early in the match. And being active means that you try to attack your opponent in a way to create some type of advantage over part of his body and be able to get to this body, whether it be his full body or at least an arm, a head, something like that you can create a quick scoring move. The old days of pummeling them to death and then do the big body lock is past. We have to be able to be active, look active, and do everything that's very important because the matches only last 5 minutes. So I'd like to ask Andre to come out here, and I will begin by talking about proper body position and how to move into your opponent at the beginning of the match. It's very important that once again, Greco stance, that you try to keep a fairly upright position. You can bend forward, possibly to the point where your middle of your chest is right over your lead knee, as you can see here. And also, the elbows close into your body, but keep your chest out, your hips bent, your knees bent. Now, as far as moving into your opponent, it's very important that at the beginning of the match that you reach out and grab a line, whether it be this way, across his body, here, arm, head, anything like this. Anytime that you're grabbing the arm, you look very active, and that's very important. So here is an outside 2-on-1. You can grab the person's wrist. Once again, hold to your own body, reach up, grab the very high here, make a shift like that. Both hands here. This is an outside 2-on-1. Good position to be in here. For me, I can move him where I want. I also want to move behind him. Notice how my leg sits behind his leg, and I move my arm up into his armpit, and my shoulder into the back of the shoulder. This is the outside 2-on-1 position. The inside 2-on-1 position, grabbing the person here, and inside, both hands up toward the ceiling. I can shift my grip here, and moving my elbow into his chest. Very important here that I'm pulling on his arm, but I'm pushing away with my chest. This is a very good movement position. So here, I can do what I need to do. Also look at my stance. I would call this more of a cleansing stance. With my feet in this position, this is called the inside 2-on-1. And also here, you can do a lot of spinning moves. Very important that when doing the arm spin move, that you're able to do also the back step. The back step is a very important move in any type of arm throw or head throw, or even headlock throw positioning. The back step is designed to get your weight underneath your opponent's weight, and that way make the move successful. Now, as far as the back step goes, you can see that already I have my right leg leading my body and leading his body. So to then do an arm spin off of this, all I have to do is now get my left leg in underneath his body, and that is done simply by back stepping in. Notice how my left leg slides across the mat and back behind my body right here. I can pivot on my right foot, and notice my positioning here. I'm changing levels, dropping, and facing in that direction at the beginning of my arm spin throw. Once again, right leg in, back step, facing away from my opponent. Also, it's very important that whether I'm inside 2-on-1, if my opponent has me here, any type of throw that I begin, it's very important that I keep a very good grip on his arm, get my shoulder underneath his armpit, getting my hips and holding in position, and follow through with the arm spin throw. Once again, it can also be done with this throw from the classical over-under position, but watch the same leg movements, arm coming through, back stepping in. Now that move is for 3 points in Greco-Roman competition because your opponent has gone from his feet to his back. And we'll turn, back step in, and throw.
In this sequence, we see Mark Furr at the U.S. Nationals wrestling Martin Strimska off an outside 2-on-1, moving off of the outside 2-on-1 into a beautiful arm spin. He steps in, very deeply moving his hip under his opponent, and then finishes with a nice hip heist and pushing into his opponent for a beautiful 5-point arm spin. This is a very good action sequence of Derek Waldrop in blue wrestling Randy Couture in the 89 Concord International Finals. Here, Waldrop comes from an inside 2-on-1, right here as an inside 2-on-1, and then drops down into a fine arm spin here. Dropping down with Couture's arm, throwing him through for a very nice 3-point arm spin move.
Outside 2-on-1, once again, wrist up, arm high, working on behind my opponent here. It's very important that I keep his arm close to my chest. I can do an outside arm throw, and the way I perform this is simply stepping in front of my opponent. It's very important that you plant your feet here very tight. I can also rotate his arm, straighten his arm. Now, my left leg does a short back step, stepping back here before I do a throw. Here again, stepping in, rotating his wrist, riding my shoulder with the back of his arm, and back stepping before I begin to move. It's very important as I bring my opponent down that my knee stays up until my opponent hits the mat when the knee is coming around. And that will be a 1-point arm throw.
1988 Olympian and 89 Purdue Tour winner Sean Sheldon here in red in Olympic trials against Steve Perdurki performs a beautiful 2-on-1, outside 2-on-1 arm throw. Notice how he stepped in front of his opponent, bringing his hips in, and now he moves around very nicely to finish the takedown.
Stepping through again, arm in, the leg in, back step. Maybe you may say, well, isn't that a trick? In Greco-Roman wrestling, if your leg is in its proper position and a person moves over it from the inside position, that is not a trick. However, it's very important that I do not do that, then that is a trick. So if I have placed my leg here, that is not the trick as far as outside arm throw. Sometimes you can actually step in and create a throw like that. But I would recommend doing the basic arm throw, having the from behind you.
This is myself against Chris Tyrone in the final Olympic trials in Pensacola, Florida. I have moved in. I have a 2-on-1 here. It's a good example of controlling your opponent with a 2-on-1. Moving into him, notice how he has to move backwards, and off of this, I move into an underhook under his arm, and this forces Chris Tyrone to do a slip throw to avoid being scored on, which puts you in a very active position.
I will be performing the classic headlock situation. Many times this may be set up by getting your opponent a little bit off balance. I may pull my opponent this way to move him and then come back with a headlock from there. Once again, as you can see, my feet in this fencing position are already in proper position. I can move my opponent here and then drop my arm off and I come right up here, catching my opponent right along the jawline and moving his head and shoulders up towards the mat. Also, it's very important that I keep his arms high. If I'm wrestling an opponent who's down here, it's very important that when I begin to throw, I move everything up so I can get proper hip position, stepping in right here. Once again, the back step positioning, head high, arm high, knee back right here. And that would be a 3 or 5 point move depending on the amplitude and the beauty of the throw. So you can also have your arm up here, jerk your opponent this way, step in. For 3 or 5 point throw. A little variation, you can have your arms locked here. Same thing, move your opponent this way, step in, go that way, or move your opponent this way, and at the same time back step that way. Notice how I open up with my back step, and this moves him into the throw. Move him this way. There are a couple variations off the headlock. I can move into it, outside 2-on-1, stepping into him, reaching here.
Two-time Olympic champion Mikhail Momashvili wrestling in Japanese wrestling, the Concord International performs a classic headlock, backstepping into his Japanese opponent and lifting him and throwing him very nicely to the back for a 5-point headlock and an eventual pin.
One of the most popular moves today in Greco-Roman wrestling is the front headlock throw. The front headlock has become very popular just recently, actually since 1984, where the Koreans were very successful, and now the Finnish wrestlers and also the Russians are very good at this move. The basic front headlock is set up either where your opponent has his head down and moves towards you, and you can move into the front headlock off of this, or you have a setup that brings his head down and you can put your front headlock on here. Front headlock, the very most important part of the front headlock is your arm position along your opponent's face. It's very important that the ridge of your forearm is along your opponent's jaw, just like this. You can see that if I push up real hard, I'm pushing into the side of his teeth. Now my arm is very tight around the back of his head and across his jaw right here. Also, because this is Greco-Roman, I do not have to worry about him grabbing my leg. I want to keep my hips in, my legs into his body, and from here, by lowering my weight, pushing my chest down on his head, I can supply more pressure on his head here. You can see just by moving this way, I can control my opponent's head. Now, this arm goes around my opponent's arm here, and I can lock on the one wrist that is very tight. When I move and sit, I have good control of my opponent's head and shoulders. As you can see from here, just by moving my hips in, I can control my opponent. I would usually, once again, from the center strength, step across from here just by popping my hips. I can come across. And that would be also a 3-point move in Greco-Roman wrestling. So once again, you can come into this move either your opponent's head is down, and you simply move into it there, or you can have a good lock position, step back, drive your opponent down, and move the lock on right here. So again, kick in, good power. That would be 3, possibly a fall.
Andy Saris, 1988 Olympian from the New York Wrestling Club in Albany, is wrestling Craig Pollard here from the Marine Corps. He has the front headlock position. Notice he's trying to force his head down and drive him down into the mat. Seeing that he can't do that, he then readjusts and does a front headlock throw towards the free arm and bridges him over for a very nice 3-point turn, feet to the back, scoring 3 points for Andy Saris in the Olympic trials. Ivan Zofarakian here of the Soviet Union utilizes power and technique on this front headlock move, moving his hips into his opponent, also using his leg and body to trap his opponent's arm to bring him over for a completed 3-point front headlock move. Derek Waldrop, wrestling Randy Couture here in the Concord International Finals, moves in the parterre position into a front headlock. Here he's picking Couture up. Notice how deep his knees and hips are into his opponent's head. On this front headlock, he moves in a little bit different direction, moving to his left over his opponent's arm and executing a very nice 3-point front headlock move.
Another very popular move in Greco-Roman wrestling is the duck under, and we'll also move into what we call the high dive to get to the opponent's waist. The duck under is a very popular move. Usually both opponents would be slightly bent over. One of the favorite ways to move into the duck under is off the pommel position. So when the opponent starts bringing his arm towards you and his arm is moving forward, you can use that as an opening to get to the duck under. So if I'm wrestling him, his arm is moving forward. Right here, by moving his arm over my head. This is kind of a freestyle high cross position. Right here, you're stepping in, notice how my legs are stepping in between, and by moving my one arm back here, it gives me that window to get to that duck under. Also, it's very important that my hips stay in. Now, many times the opponent will realize what is happening and start to move backwards, but if you can move your hips in very quickly, and what I would like to say is looking to the ceiling, pushing your head against your opponent's, the back of his arms, you can get to your opponent from that duck under. With your proper position, you can step in between, lift, and bring your opponent to the back, or lift, and throw him that way also.
Mark Ford here, 3-time U.S. Olympian, is wrestling Martin Strimska at the U.S. Nationals here. He has an underhook on his left arm, and right here he moves into a perfect duck under, dropping levels, hips into his opponent, getting his head behind his opponent's arm, and moving around behind him, continuing to rotate till he can force his opponent to the mat and finish the move properly. It's a very good example of a duck under.
Once again, in a pummel position, when your opponent moves his arm forward, you can step, changing levels, moving your hips in, getting your hip arm underneath your opponent's arm. Right from here, by moving your hips inward and your head back, you can actually pull your opponent onto yourself. And right here, deep position, good position, throw back for another 3 or 5 point throw.
In this series, we see Levon Zofalakian performing a very well-accomplished duck under here against Majidov's, another Soviet wrestler. Here he does the duck under, notice a nice hip penetration and reach to the waist. Now, Majidov counters him, so he has to reduck him once again, bringing his hips in and finishing very nicely the duck under for a 1-point takedown. We will see here a very powerful duck under by Levon Zofalakian against Juan Jimenez of Cuba. Here from an overhook position, he steps into the duck, notice the hip position, head position, and arch all the way through. He will score a 3-point throw because he brought his opponent from his feet to his back. Levon Zofalakian here, again clearing the arm, head back behind his opponent's arm and hips in, grabbing the opponent around the waist and finishing for a 1-point takedown.
It is very important in the sport of Greco-Roman wrestling to get the underhook position. By getting an underhook position, you can look very active on your opponent. Now, once you get there, you may work also for what we call the double under, which is having both arms under your opponent's arms. What I like to teach is how do we get that? What is one of the best ways to get that double under finishes? Here again, inside 2-on-1, and sometimes your opponent may try to reach around behind you with his foot arm, and right from there, moving my arm, I can move to that double under position, moving this arm up, and right there, I get to the double under position. If I'm lucky enough to get an inside underhook here, I can also move off of this, just by simply overpowering my opponent and moving it here to the double under position. Now, it's important to know how to finish from this position. One of my favorite ways of finishing off of this is to do by pulling your opponent onto. It's very important from this position to keep your elbows high and your opponent onto your own body. So what I will do is I'll back up and pull him onto me, and once his weight is on me, I can shift quickly down to his waist, lifting and bringing his back. Noticing how high I keep my locket. If I let my arms go down, he's able to get this lock on me and move his waist away from me. So it's very important that when you double under, it's very high and you're pulling your opponent towards you. Let's move this way here. Another good move I can use off of this is to step around my opponent's leg, just like this, on this double under. Now he will try to re-step around their leg. Right from there I can do a whipped throw. You'll notice that I do not arch my back too much here. It's just simple movement. Step around, do a little bit. But it has a nice throwing motion to it, and that will also score 3 points. And lastly, if I have a double under and I'm pulling back, and my opponent is heavily sagging downward, I can shift the leg and drop him to his back. Many times I may want to ensure that this move works by actually catching my opponent's inside leg here. So pulling and moving my knee outward, making sure I do a little bit of a block on my leg. It's so subtle that the officials probably won't see it.
Anthony Amato, in blue, 1988 Olympian, is wrestling Frank Famiano, 1984 Olympian, in red. Here is a very nice series of moves, beginning first with a slide-by attempt that is countered by Frank Famiano. Again, Amato moves in for a very nice duck under, good hip position, head position, moving now to a double under position and step and whip throw for a 3-point throw. Derek Waldrop, in blue, 1987 Pan Am silver medalist, wrestling Randy Couture at the Concord International, is moving out of a front headlock position by Couture into a high dive duck under move. He now moves from that duck under into a double under. Notice how high he is on the body of Couture. Then he does a step around and throws a whip throw with a double under, throwing Couture right to his back. Beautiful throw.
Another move that I mentioned earlier we want to show right now is the high dive move. It's very popular for Americans because the beginning of the move is similar to either a single leg shot or a double leg shot, but it also requires a good setup. The setups for the high dive, in other words, may be an arm drag situation where you're coming in and starting to arm drag your opponent. Now what he will naturally try to do is pull his arm back and turn to face it. Now this may open him up momentarily for the high dive move. So we may be a little bit farther apart. I'll start to drag, we'll pull back. Right from there, I can do the high dive. You notice that I have to change levels. I want to come very low, so it will be very difficult for my opponent to also change levels and stop me. So my first movement is lowering the hip, shooting very low to the body as he's moving back, and then moving up into the high dive situation. Another very simple one may be a head snap, pulling your opponent down, moving away as he brings his head up. Following up by high dive, right here it hooks in, lift, and finish.
114.5-pounder Sean Sheldon red against Bajirki in the final Olympic trials utilizes a very nice high waist dive. He moves into his opponent and shows very active wrestling with this move.
The I'd like to show you is the arm drag, but it's more of a Greco style arm drag because you do not have to protect your legs once again. The traditional arm drag is usually moving your opponent's arm by and stepping around to the side. In our Greco-Roman style of arm drag, once again we begin by moving the opponent's arm to the side. I recommend thumb down because I can get a little bit quicker movement, moving the opponent's arm down and across. But also notice my leg movement, I'm stepping in between my opponent right here. Instead of around, I'm just stepping in between, moving him across. And from here, bringing my hand off of his arm, I can reach to his far waist and lift and bring my opponent down to the mat. And that's a little bit different, and that's our Greco arm drag. Right from here,
Olympian Sean Sheldon in red utilizes a Greco drag to attack his opponent, flanking his opponent, stepping between his leg and moving around behind him.
two major forms of body locks. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least introduce them a little bit here. Part of the reason we're putting it more at the end of the tape is, like I said, in major competitions, you simply don't see these as often. Both moves will be usually done from the classical over-under position of Greco-Roman wrestling. Now, in order to do a proper body lock throw of any kind, it's very important that I step into this zone underneath his own weight. This is called the danger zone. Anytime I step into this situation, I should be ready to either throw or be thrown. So when I step in there, I should be very confident in what I'm trying to do. Now, the sag body lock is called that because what you're doing is you're moving into your opponent. Notice my leg position. I'm moving my hips into my opponent, in between his legs, and then in that way I'm getting very tight. And this is done very quickly in competition. I'm pulling him close. You can notice how I have to keep my arm trapped down on his arm and pulling him very close to me here. Now, in order to make the move work correctly, I should sag my weight down onto my opponent to pull him onto me. Once his weight shifts onto me, then I can complete the throw. I can also rotate him a little bit in order to change his leg position, because I want to make sure that I can keep the weight on his outside leg, his own left leg here. So when I step into sag, I will also rotate him, keep him very tight, and then from here, throw him with a sag body lock. So over on the position, step in, sag body lock.
Mark Fuller in blue is wrestling Martin Strumska here at 80 U.S. Nationals. Here he is in a variation of the sag body lock. He has the overhook on his opponent's left arm. Now, he starts to move his opponent into the danger zone, pulls him up onto his hip, and then pops him over for a beautiful three-point sag body lock throw.
The next form of body lock that I'll be showing will be the step around body lock. The step around is a little bit different in that you are stepping around your opponent's leg instead of in between his legs. You're taking him a little bit of a different direction, but ultimately you're always throwing your opponent towards the arm that you have trapped next to his side. It's very important on all throws is that you throw the person to the trapped arm side. So I will demonstrate the step around body lock once again from the classical over-under position. Now, watching my arm here, I will move his arm up here and step around his leg. Watching my leg again, stepping around and now. From this position, it's very important that when I get around his leg, that I put him very close to my body and hold them tight while I go into a classical throw in arch position. So I'm stepping around, holding them tight. There's a classical step around by we'll do it here from a little different angle. Very tight here, popping his arm up, moving, hips in, pulling him onto you, and throwing him. We're going to move now into the parterre positions. Parterre is French for on the floor, a very integral part of international competition. Usually after a slip throw, in other words, if my opponent has tried to make a scoring move on me, maybe an arm split or something, if he misses and he goes to the mat, then from that down position I will have a chance to turn him. So it's very important that you can score on your opponent in a 15 to 20 second amount of time. If I can't score on him by then he will go back to his feet. So maybe I'll be showing the gut wrench. From the gut wrench you can score 1 or 2 points, depending on whether, when you're exposing your opponent's shoulders to the back, if he goes over his shoulders or if he goes hand to hand. Now, there's 3 levels of gut wrench: low gut wrench, mid gut wrench, and high gut wrench. I will be showing the low and the high gut wrench. The mid-level gut wrench is very similar to both the high and the low, but it just plain requires a lot more strength. There's a little bit more technique for the low gut wrench. Now, the proper lock of the low gut wrench is the butterfly lock, and I'll stand behind Andre here and right like this. If you can see this is the low gut wrench lock. It's very important that you're locking your opponent very low on his waist. I can feel the front of my opponent's hip bones. That is as low as I want to be. In other words, I'm a little bit below his belt line. Now, Andre will go down onto the mat, realizing that with my low gut wrench, I'm grabbing him about below the waistline. It's also very important that to get into the gut wrench position, I position my arm properly. Noticing, I put my elbow and my hand flat down on the mat, reach over my opponent, will rub his body over my arm, reach through, get the lock, and now I can move on into my low gut wrench. This has to be done very quickly. Now, as you can see, my gut wrench is low enough that you can actually see his waistline here, and when I press my arm, I'm pushing up into his hip bones. Also, it's very important that with my own knees, I push his legs apart. This is very important. If I do not push his legs apart, he can pull himself forward, and then the officials will call us back onto our feet because I'm too low for a veteran to get to even wrestling. So it's very important that you can stay below his belt line, but not even lower than that. So the way I do that, with my own knees, I move his legs apart. Andre will have a very difficult time moving forward or backwards in this position. Also, my chest is pushing up on his buttocks. This forces his waist down into my own arm lock and makes my gut wrench much tighter this way. And from here, I will step over his leg, stepping very high. Notice how high my knee is. Stepping very high, keeping a very tight lock, and then I start to pull him by pushing with my back leg, pulling onto me right in this position. From here, I will continue to pull him onto me until my shoulders almost touch the mat. Right from here, I can go to a nice bridge important that the knees are facing the ceiling, and I can pop them up and over a 2-point gut wrench.
Three-time Olympian and junior world champion Mark Fuller here at the Nationals against Martin Strymska is moving behind his opponent for a gut wrench attempt. He's moved behind him. Now he takes the step, moving very nicely over, and just as his shoulders come close to the match, he bridges, and notice the butterfly lock as he bridges his opponent through for a perfect 2-point gut wrench.
I will now be showing the high gut wrench position, which has a slight variation from the low gut wrench position. Once again, the opponent will be flattened out in this position, trying to prevent any turn. Very important that you place your hand in the proper position, lift him over, you get your arm underneath his body from the start of the gut wrench. Now once again, I have a butterfly lock, but notice how high my grip is. I'm pushing up underneath his armpits, and I may also get onto my toes and force his chest and shoulders down into the mat. In this move, I'll be moving to my left, so in the process of doing the move, it's very important that I'm moving his arm up. The more I can move his arm up towards the ear, the better chance it is that I move his defense away and I'm able to do the gut wrench. So in the high gut wrench, whatever direction you go, you have to attempt to move his arm up towards his head, drive him down to the mat. Now the next most important part of the move may be to lift his chest off the mat and pull him up on the leg. So I'll pull him this way. Look how my leg comes very high. I lift, step across, and right from here, he's up on my leg in the lower position, and through for the gut wrench.
Olympic gold medalists Levon Zofalakian and Alexander Majidov meet here with Zofalakian and Blue doing an upper body gut wrench. Notice he starts to the left, and how high he has his opponent up into his hips and into his chest, and he shifts directions, pulling his opponent onto his body and then popping him over beautifully for a 2-point gut wrench.
Work on is the lift position or the down position, once again the parterre, and going into the lifts where you will either score possibly 3 to 5 points on your throw, 3 or 5 I should say. If you bring your opponent through the air, exposing his shoulders to the mat, you will score at least 3 points. If you do it in a fashion where his shoulders actually touch the mat on his way to the mat, you will score a 5-point throw. So it can be very exciting and of course very profitable. So Andre will go down into the down position again. A few different things about the lift from the top position in Greco-Roman wrestling. A little bit different lock. You are not trying to go as low here on the lift, because if you go low once again and the opponent moves ahead, you will slide too low and then you will not be allowed to do the lift. So it's very important that you grab your opponent and you begin the lift with the lock at about mid-chest level, right about here. It's also very important that you use your weight to sit on his side, once again, to stabilize your opponent. You have to anchor him to the mat so he's not moving around, moving forward until you begin your lift. So here I have him stabilized. My lock is a little bit different. I cannot do the butterfly lock here because my arms are not long enough. So I'm doing more of a C-lock type of lock, just like this. More of a both fingers in the C position and this interlocking like this. This is the lock I have on my opponent right here about mid-chest position. From When weighting down on my thighs, I can step up, bring my leg up by the armpit. You want to step high so that when your opponent tries to move forward, you're still in good position to lift him. But right from here, I try to keep my butt down, my head up, and make one continuous movement right up to my knee. And move around a little bit. You can see here that I can hold my opponent close to my body by resting my elbow on my thigh. This arm, you can see I've also shifted my grip over to this side of the body, and I'm keeping him very tight. Now the finish is you keep your opponent tight, sit down on his leg while you step out, pull him towards you. And then back to a back arch for a finish.
In the 1989 International Tournament in Concord, John Morgan here, 1988 Olympian, in red, lifts his opponent from Mexico in blue. Starting out with good foot position, lifts his opponent up to his hip. Notice his arm resting on his thigh. Very nice hip lock. Steps under his opponent as he steps out. Good hip position as he rotates his hip into his opponent and looks to his mat for a very nice 5-point back salto move. Mikhail Mamashvili, two-time Olympic gold medalist here in blue, wrestling his opponent from Japan. Begins the body lift position, now lifts him up into his waist. Has to work very hard here. Notice his hip position into his opponent's leg, pulling his opponent into his hip. Very good arm and thigh position. You notice his arm lock position. Now he steps out and then readjusts his grip here to get a very nice arch and throw for a resounding 3-point throw.